Welcome to the channel. Today, we will travel back in time, to explore Arrianos' Indica, and the adventurous naval journey of Nearchus, the admiral of Alexander the Great, from the Indus River to Persia. Arrianos, a Greek general in the Roman army, who wrote in the 2nd century AD, draws on the records of Nearchus, and other authors, such as Megasthenes, to provide us with valuable insights into India, its cultural and natural heritage, as well as this epic voyage. Starting off, Arrianos provides various pieces of information about India itself. Between the Indus River and westward toward the Coffin River, there are certain tribes, the Astacani and Asakani. These are Indian tribes, but they do not resemble the rest of the Indians, living east of the Indus. The Nisaeans also live there, who are not Indian, and are possibly Greek, descendants of Dionysus soldiers, from his expedition to India, according to Greek mythology. The mountain where the city of Nysa is built, is called Meroz. According to the myth, Zeus sewed the embryo of Dionysus into his thigh, in order to help it survive. Meroz, the name of the mountain, is the Greek word for thigh. However, Arrianos considers India to be the land east of the Indus. He defines India to the north by Mount Taurus, also known by other names in the region, Peloponnesus, Imojus, and Emmaus, depending on the area, and even Caucasus by the Greeks. This refers to an extension of the mountain range, from Scythia to the Himalayas. Beyond the Hyphasis River, he has little knowledge, though he mentions the Ganges River, and the great city of Palambothra, or Pataliputra. Regarding the Indus River, which he considers the western border of India, he notes that its delta is very similar to the Nile's, with branches that do not join. In the Indian language, the Indus Delta is called Patala. He also mentions some measurements of the time, relatively accurate for that era. For instance, from west to east, there was a royal road to Palambothra, and the recorded distance is 10,000 stadia, roughly about 1,000 miles, regular or nautical, depending on which stadion the measure is used, which is not specified. He describes the rivers of India, most of which were navigable at that time. The Ganges, in certain places, was wide enough to form lakes, while in narrower sections, it was about 100 stadia wide. At the same time, he mentions various Indian tribes, and their regions along these rivers. I might be mistaken, but the tributary Sonos could be the river Son, and the region of Pazales with the river Oxymages might be the Ponjal region with its small river. If you are from India, you might find the book interesting. He further informs us that the climate during the summer is rainy, and that the river waters become muddy during this time. The rivers have crocodiles, as well as sea creatures. The Indian dolphin comes to mind. He also mentions how they capture elephants. They dig a large circular trench, and the extracted soil is placed next to the excavation, to form a wall. Inside the circle, they place female elephants, leaving one entrance with a bridge, and they hide. When the wild elephants enter, they let them exhaust themselves, by removing the bridge, and later tame them, with the help of tame elephants, sent over from the surrounding inhabited areas. The young and problematic elephants are released. He also mentions an incident, where an elephant died from sadness, after accidentally killing its rider, as well as elephants dancing and playing cymbals. Remarkable animals in India include the tiger and the ants, which are the size of foxes. There are also parrots that mimic human speech, snakes at least 5 meters long, monkeys, and other wondrous creatures. There are venomous snakes as well, and only Indian doctors were able to cure their bites. He also tells us about the sea pearl, which is rare in the West, and that it is fished with nets. The shells have a community like bees, and if one catches the queen of the shells, they can easily catch the others too. Megasthenes, from whom Arrianos draws his information, was also an envoy of the greatest king of the Indians, Sandrakotos, Chandragupta Maurya. He says that the Indians do not invade other nations, because they consider it unjust, and neither do others invade India. Before Alexander the Great, Greek mythology mentions 2 other expeditions to India, those of Dionysus and Hercules. According to Arrianos, the expedition of Dionysus is evidenced by many elements, such as the existence of the aforementioned city and mountain, the ivy that grows there, as well as the warm music, and the clothes of the people in the area, which resemble those of the Bacchae of Dionysus. After his campaign, Dionysus left behind his most important companion, Spatumba, as king, and until Sandrakotos, 153 kings ruled over 6,042 years. That's approximately 39.5 years per king. Regarding the campaign of Heracles, Arrianos takes a critical stance, stating that it is likely the Macedonians were mistaken in naming the mountain Caucasus. He even mentions a cave in the mountain that they concluded it was the place where Prometheus was chained, after stealing fire from the gods. He also says that there is a tribe, the Sibs, who dressed in animal skins, and carried clubs, and the Macedonians considered them descendants of Heracles. In his opinion, this Heracles was likely not the Theban one, but rather the Tyrian or Egyptian one, or possibly some king from northern India. Here, we should note, that there are many heroes named Heracles, according to Diodorus of Sicily. However, the Indians themselves consider him a local figure, but they say he wore the same clothes as the Theban Heracles, and that his expedition took place 15 generations after Dionysus. The Indians in the south, he says, resemble the Ethiopians, while those in the north resemble the Egyptians. Megasthenes also mentions 118 Indian tribes, and that in the past they lived as nomads, like the Scythians, without building cities, and that a key element of their diet came from the bark of a tree they called tala. This was until the expedition of Dionysus, who built cities, legislated laws, and gave them wine, as he had given to the Greeks. He even speculates that Triptolemus, a mythological figure from Greek mythology, who traveled the world to teach agriculture, which he had learned from goddess Demeter, didn't manage to reach India before Dionysus. Thus Dionysus gave the Indians domesticated wheat, yoked oxen, and turned them into farmers. He also taught them respect for the gods, and the use of percussion instruments for religious ceremonies, and for war. Next, Arrian discusses Indian culture. There are many cities built from wood, primarily due to the climate, and only in higher altitudes, away from rivers, are there stone constructions. Among the Indians, there are no slaves. The most important class is that of the sophists, likely yogis or rishis, who usually live in simplicity, naked in the shade of trees, so large that their shadow can accommodate 10,000 people. The other 6 classes are farmers, the most numerous, herders who are nomadic and also hunters, artisans and traders, warriors, the second most numerous, overseers, who are somewhat like inspectors and do not lie. It is customary among Indians to not lie. And finally, one of the smallest groups, the ruling class, essentially, from which those who hold significant administrative positions come. No one is allowed to change class, or marry outside their class. The only exception is becoming a sophist, as it is the most difficult way of life. Indians dye their beards various colors, or very white, they like bright colors in their clothes, and white leather footwear with high soles. Their weaponry includes a huge bow, suited to their height, or in some cases a spear, a broad two-handed sword, which they rarely use, and a narrow shield on their left arm. Horsemen carry 2 spears and a smaller shield. They are usually tall and thin. A significant part of Arrian's Indica concerns the naval expedition of Nearchus. After the necessary sacrifices to the gods and the river deities of the region, athletic and musical competitions were organized. Once the duties of the generals were assigned, each force took its path, and the ships sailed down, from Hydaspes or Jhelum River, to Acesines or Chenab River, then to Indus, and finally to the Great Sea, the Indian Ocean. The fleet, consisting of about 800 ships, was tasked with reaching the Persian Gulf. The truth is, it was challenging to find a suitable admiral for such a difficult mission, and Nearchus and Alexander deliberated on who to appoint. They were finding a flaw in each candidate, and were excluding them, until Nearchus passionately requested to Alexander that he be given command of the fleet. He said, "If it is humanly possible, and the gods are willing, I will bring your men and ships to Persia." Although Alexander initially did not want his friend to take such a risk, he ultimately relented. This decision though, along with the organization, equipment, and care provided by even the triarchs, boosted the morale of the army.